Welcome to our program today. We've been talking for the past few programs on really a man and his children, a man or a father and his children. And we've really been talking about a collision. And we realize that we have probably said some things that are not politically correct, that may be offensive to some. And part of that, what we're talking about, is a collision of two different views. Police officers, when they go, if there's an accident or there's something that's happened, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll talk to different people. They'll get them off to the side, because what they realize is that one person over here might have saw it this way and somebody else over here might have saw some other things. And they try, because they realize to get a complete picture, you might have to talk to some different people that see this from different angles. So we're talking about some different views, some different angles of looking, especially at fathers and their children. And we realize that some of our views are diametrically opposed to one another. And we realize that some of the things we may have said, as I said, may be offensive. And our goal and our aim in reality is not to be offensive, but we are trying to bring, as Christians, people will define Christians different ways. Now, I happen to be of and I believe I've got a biblical worldview. I believe that there can be honorable people that might see some things different, but yet we are looking at things through the light of what God says and God's standards and God's value system concerning a father and his children. Now, we realize that may not be exactly the way our culture sees things today, but we have to take a look. There was a period of time in this nation that we had more of a biblical worldview of a father and his role in the home, and actually it seemed like our homes and our families were in much better shape. Today, we've got a different worldview, or we look at the family, and especially fathers, through a different set of glasses, and it doesn't seem to be working out so well. So we're sort of talking about that and doing our best to maybe take a look at what has seemed to work and to be accurate and produce good results. We began to look at that and doing our best to look at those colliding worldviews, but being able to take a look, what is a biblical worldview? What is the view that God gave us of a father and his children? So if you got the courage to stick around, we might offend you, we might tick you off, we might say something you don't like, but we're sorry in one sense, but in another sense, we're not sorry. We're just trying to bring some information that could help you as a father with your children. I've got with me David Erickson. He's one of the men been with me. You've got 4 children that you've raised, and then I've got
6 grandchildren.
6 grandchildren, man. All right. And then I got Preston Bound here. You've got 3 children that you've raised, and how many grandkids?
8 and a half.
8 and a half.
8 and 1 in the hopper.
And 8 and 1 in the hopper. All right. Adam, how many kids you got?
I got 3.
You got any grandchildren yet?
No grandkids.
Okay, all right. And I've got 7, and 3 of them married, and a 4th one about to get married, and hadn't got any grandkids yet, but I'm bugging them. But anyway, so listen, guys, I want to talk about in these colliding worldviews. It's amazing how attitudes, having a proper attitude affects how you see things. Adam, I'm going to come to you first. What's a correct attitude that a father should have? What is one that you would pick out that would be a correct attitude that a father should have towards his children?
Well, I think that, in my house, one of the things I try to remind myself of is when I'm correcting them, I have to remember that they're still children. Have an attitude of understanding that they are children, they are going to mess up. So I don't have to call them out on every single thing they ever do wrong. Even though I see it, I try to remind myself, okay, slow down. They are just kids. Train them up, show them why it's wrong, but, let them be kids still. So I think patience and understanding. Okay,
that's good. All right, Preston, what's an attitude you see?
It's how you look at your children. You look at them, are they a blessing for God, or are they just a hassle? If they're a blessing from God, then you're more likely to nurture them. You're more likely to train them up in the way they should go. If they're always a hassle, you won't want to do anything with them. You won't train them. You won't lead them. You won't show love and affection to them. And then what kind of children are you training up? What kind of children are you raising up? And then when they get to be 16 or they get to be teenagers and they're in trouble, you're going to go, why? What happened? Because you didn't spend any time with them. You looked at them as a negative thing, not a positive thing. And the research says it brings great joy to married couples when they have children. It does. It's brought me great joy. It brings my son-in-law great joy. It doesn't mean it's easy. It isn't easy, but it brings great satisfaction and great joy. So it's like, how do you look at them? They're not a negative, they're a positive. And I feel sorry for people that don't have children, only since because they're missing that aspect. They're missing the joys that a family does. When my daughters would come up and my granddaughters come run, Papa, 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 that brings me great joy. It's not the money that's important. It's not the position that's important. It's not the stuff you have. But it's like, I get part of that. And it is a blessing. It's an heritage from the Lord. So I look upon them as I'm a blessed man because I have children and I have grandchildren. No, most of them aren't, but no, I'm just kidding. But, no, it is a great joy. But it's how you look at it. If I look at things in a negative way, all I'll see is the negative. If I look at things in a positive way, I'll see the positive. And you want to amplify the positive.
Man, it's amazing. You ever been around people, especially parents, that have a bad attitude about their kids? Man, can't got to do this. And I'm, sometimes you get down the mouth, but sometimes you can hear it almost spiteful. I deal with these kids. Can't wait till they get out of the home.
And how would you like to be that child hearing that? What happens to that child's psyche when they hear from their parents, you're no good, you never do anything right, you're stupid, you're just, man, I wish I didn't have you. And unfortunately, parents say that to their children. It scars them, it wounds them. And then later in life, they're struggling with life. And how are they going to teach their children that way? If they've been brought up, you're stupid, you'll never amount to anything, you can't accomplish anything. Everything you do is wrong. You never do anything right. I wish I never had you. Wow. Wow.
Man.
Wow.
Just you saying those hurts my heart, man.
Yes, it does.
It just, because you think, one of the things sometimes we've all had to deal with people, and even ministry-wise, you say that, and I think of people that, forgive me, maybe there's probably a psychological term that defines it better than this, and maybe this sounds a little spiritual kind of thing, but I want to call it that have a spirit of rejection, or they look at things in terms of this person didn't shake my hand and I'm rejected, they don't like me, or they didn't smile. But I think some of it comes down because they were rejected at home.
Absolutely.
And so they view their lens that they look through life as a rejection lens, rather than an acceptance lens.
You think about it, if you're a child and you're nurtured and you're loved and and you're in a secure home, you're going to be a secure, loving individual, adult. And if you're not, you're never going to be secure. You're never going to be loving. You're not going to know what to do. And it's going to show. And it's unfortunate because we see in the church. We see the woundedness of people that come into the church because if you look back upon their lives and ask, what kind of home did you grow up? It's almost scary. You wonder why they're reacting the way they're reacting. It's because of the environment they grew up. They didn't grow up in a loving home. They didn't grow up in a secure home. They didn't grow up into where they were nurtured and they were trained and they knew the direction and there were values, and especially godly values, not worldly values. And learning that the family sacrifices one for another, that they love one another, they stand in the gap for one another. And it's just like that. Out there, it's just like, you're on your own, buddy. You're on your own. What's going to happen to that child? There's no guidance. There's no direction. There's no parameters for them to rest in. They never get rest. They're always agitated. They're always anxious about everything. And that's sad.
Man, that's good, Preston. David, what are some things that you see, proper attitudes towards a man looking towards his children?
For me, it's my children are God's children.
Yes.
One day I'm going to stand before my Maker and have to account for the way I raised his children.
That's right.
And I want to be on good terms when that happens.
Yes.
Now, you say something, I like that now. Now, I think of another word right along, you're responsible for those children.
Oh, my Lord, yes.
Yes, we are.
Absolutely. Probably the biggest thing, earlier I referenced security. And some people that might mean bringing in the bacon, working a job and just being, really, Preston, you hit the nail on the head. It's time. If you want to show your children that you love them, if you want them to be secure in your love, they'd say that love is spelled Time. Spend time with your kids. I remember when my kids were young, we would take them out to the park, we'd take them sliding, we'd take them to the beach. All these things that my parents did with me back when it was politically correct. Now, mom and dad are off working and the kids are raising themselves, or daycares, sorry. You need to spend time with your children. That's the biggest, and it's not easy. You spend a hard day at work. You got to come home. You want to put your feet up. You want to take a break. And the kids answer. But you know what? That's where your life starts. It's not in the workplace. It's in the home.
Go ahead, Press.
And time is. They used to say it's the quality of time. No, time. It's the time you spend, the time you're involved with your children, the time you spend around, the time that you see you're interactive with the family. Not just, well, okay, I've got 15 minutes, but it's good. We're going to make a quality time. That doesn't count. It's when you're there on a consistent basis. They see Dad. Dad's involved with his family. Dad loves his family. Dad is part of that family. And the problem is, like they said, in 1950, 7% of the dads are absent. In 2004, 40% are absent. I don't know what it is today. I'd be afraid to know what it is today. And you think about the dads are absent. How's that child going to grow? How's that child going to be nurtured? It's not a good statistic.
But within that, if I boil that down, that responsibility.
Absolutely.
That a proper attitude for a father towards his children is I'm responsible in some form or fashion for their outcome.
Yes, we are.
Not their income. And a lot of people, we've got to get them educated so they get a great job and what have you. We're finding out some people that have got great educations they just end up an educated thief. I mean, they get into a CEO of a corporation and play around with the books and work with the figures. If you haven't produced, if you haven't sown into, if you haven't felt, and I think that responsibility, and I think. Adam, I think you mentioned on a previous program that how children can make a man grow up. Because it puts a different view. Because all of a sudden, if you've got a proper attitude, it's now I'm responsible for something. I'm responsible. Press, you hit it on an earlier program. I'm responsible for an eternal being. Whether you're a Christian or not, do you want to raise a good citizen, somebody that gives to life and to culture, or somebody that takes? Someplace a father needs that attitude of I'm responsible for this child. Man.
One of the things that's been nice over the years is because when you look at it, that they're a gift from God, but they're on loan to you, and we're to train them up. So sometimes I've gone to God and says, God, they're really your child. You've got to take care of them. I'm done my best, but because they're really God's child. They came from God, they're going to go back to God. So we're just on loan to us, and He expects us to do the right thing, as David said. He expects us to reverence God, to train them up in His ways, that the Christian worldview, not what the world says.
Okay. Now we're going to come back, because just about every one of you have hit on a phrase that we're going to come back and talk about. Another attitude that is, if you're responsible for them, then you've got to train them. We're going to talk, because each one of you have said that in your stuff. We're going to talk about training as we come back in a few moments on For Men Only.